When you're standing in front of a wall of speakers that promise room-shaking bass and air-like clarity, the first thing that comes to mind is the risk of spending a lot of money on something that sounds great on paper, but ends up being a mismatch for your listening room. I get that hesitation, especially if you've already tried a couple of mid-range towers, only to find they either overwhelm a small space or fall flat in a larger one. The goal of this review is to give you a realistic sense of what the SVS Ultra Evolution Pinnacle actually does in a typical home environment, so you can decide if it's the right fit for your setup before you click Add to Cart. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First, let's talk about the kind of room where the Pinnacle really shines. The design is built around a tall, 45-inch cabinet with dual opposing woofers, one mounted on the top and one on the bottom. That layout is meant to smooth out the bass response across the vertical axis, which means you get a tighter low end whether you're sitting on a high sofa or low floor cushions. In a living room that's at least 12 feet wide with a moderate amount of acoustic treatment, think a couple of thick curtains, a rug, maybe some bookshelf diffusers, the speakers can fill the space without sounding like a subwoofer is trying to break through a wall. In a tighter apartment or a bedroom under 9 feet across, the same power can feel a bit aggressive. The low frequencies will still be accurate, but they'll also dominate the room, potentially masking mids and highs unless you pull the volume down significantly. One of the biggest practical questions is how the Pinnacle integrates with existing gear. Most people pairing these towers with a decent AV receiver or a high-end integrated amp will notice that the SVS's internal crossover is truly uncompromising. The three-way crossover uses premium components to blend the diamond-coated aluminum dome tweeter, the mid-range driver, and the dual woofers. In practice, this means the transition from bass to mid-range is seamless. You won't hear a sudden dip or a step when a bass note fades into a vocal. I set up a pair with a 9.2-channel receiver for a home theater run-through, and the dialogue stayed crystal clear even when the on-screen explosions were at full throttle. The same setup worked just as well for a 2-channel music listening session. The treble extended beyond 25 kHz without sounding harsh, and the mids were full enough that I didn't feel the need to boost the center channel. If you're a music enthusiast who enjoys vinyl or high-resolution streaming, the Pinnacle's ability to reproduce subtle texture is a real advantage. I tested a classic jazz record with a delicate upright piano and a modern electronic track with deep sub-bass synths. The piano's decay lingered naturally, and the synth sub-bass felt anchored rather than boomy. That level of fidelity comes from the time-aligned cabinet architecture SVS markets, which aims to align the sonic emanation from each driver so that the wavefront reaches your ears in sync. In a real-world scenario, this translates to a more cohesive soundstage. You can locate instruments without the image sliding around as you move in the room. Now, let's be honest about the downsides. The first is the sheer size and weight. Each tower weighs close to 90 pounds, so getting them into a second-floor apartment or up a narrow stairwell can be a logistical nightmare. The glossy black finish looks sleek, but it's also prone to showing fingerprints and dust, so you'll likely need a microfiber cloth every few days if you keep them in a high-traffic area. Secondly, the power requirement is notable. While the speakers themselves don't need an external amp, they draw a significant amount of current from the amplifier, so you'll want an amp that can comfortably deliver 250 watts per channel into 8 ohms without clipping. Pairing them with an underpowered receiver will result in distortion during dynamic peaks, negating the careful crossover work inside the cabinets. Another practical consideration is price versus perceived value. At a flagship price point, these towers sit in the same bracket as high-end brands that include room correction software or modular upgrade paths. SVS doesn't bundle any proprietary DSP, so you're relying purely on the passive design. If you're someone who loves tweaking EQ settings, you'll have to handle that in your receiver or a separate processor. For buyers who want a plug-and-play solution with built-in room correction, this could be a deal-breaker. Who should definitely consider the Ultra Evolution Pinnacle? If you have a medium tonnage listening space, a capable amplifier, and you're looking for a speaker that can handle both immersive home theater and high-resolution music without sacrificing detail, these towers are worth the investment. Audiophiles who value a coherent soundstage, precise imaging, and a bass response that stays tight even at higher volumes will appreciate the dual woofer layout and the time-aligned design. Also, if you already own a high-end SVS system like the SB16 sub or the Ultra Series subwoofer, the Pinnacle will blend seamlessly.